Hi everybody, Alex Employee here from Expert Forex, and in today's video we're going to talk about broker settings and specifically the stop settings used by brokers and how they could impact your manual and automated trading. Now, in a previous video that I made last year sometime in July, I mentioned 8 factors that need to align for you to be successful at Forex trading, either on a manual or an automated basis. And you can just read through those factors. You must use the correct strategy or EA. You need to trade in the most appropriate market conditions. You need to be using the correct currency, the correct time frame, correct position sizing. You need to be experiencing the correct leverage, and your broker account should be the right kind of account in terms of restrictions. And in this video we're going to be looking at some of the restrictions that are a little bit hidden. You know, we're all aware about LIFO and hedging and all that, but we don't pay attention to stop sizes, and I'm going to just highlight that in this video. So this became very important this week, where we published the free weekend gap trader, and a lot of traders started trading it but experiencing error messages. And the main reason for these error messages were around the fact that their particular broker that they were using had different stop settings to other brokers, and we're going to have a look at that. So let's have a look at the concept of a broker minimum stop. Now, when I traded a few years ago, all the brokers just had a 10 pip minimum stop. So in other words, you could never put your initial stop closer than 10 pips to the current price. And the idea behind that is because the spreads vary quite a lot. The broker wants you to have at least a bit of room to cater for spread variation. So the stop should take into account the minimum broker stop plus the spread that you're using. So for instance, if you want to enter over here at 0 and you want to use a 10 pip stop, but your spread is 2 pips, the minimum distance that the broker will allow you to put your stop is 12 pips in many cases. This is really applicable to automated trading and robots, where the robot will actually test these concepts before making sure that your settings are aligned to what you want to achieve with the robot. So some brokers have big stops, others have no stops, and others have medium stops, and this can affect your minimum stop levels. So if we look at the weekend gap trader that is a free EA, this is very applicable, because if you have a minimum gap size of 10 and your broker's minimum gap size is 10, and your spread, maximum spread is 5, it actually means that you cannot activate your stop unless you are 15 pips away from the existing price, which will let this EA shoot out an error message saying, sorry, your minimum gap level is too small for the settings that you are using and for the broker's limitations of the minimum stop level. So the solution to this is actually to find brokers that don't have any minimum stop levels, because then the EA will work quite normally. It will pay attention to the maximum spread, and it'll say, no, 10 is okay in terms of the maximum spread. But there is still a risk, because down here you have a trailing stop, and your trailing stop says when it'll kick in when, in this case, when the price is 50% of the gap. Now, if the gap's only 10 and the trailing stop kicks in at 5 and your spread is 5, therefore you are on the borderline of the allowance that you have for your stop. So these things are very critical and slightly balanced, and especially if you're using trailing stops and initial stops at the same time. So again, the answer is, if you're using brokers that don't have minimum stop distances, then your calculations become a lot easier. So let's have a look at TradersWay. This is a broker that I've set the weekend gap trading up for this weekend, and how you find your currency's minimum gap. And I'm going to use a currency called the pound New Zealand, because that's consistent throughout the brokers we're going to be looking at, and it also has quite a big variation. So if you right click on that and you click on specification, it will tell you what the stop levels are. So those are the minimum stop levels that there are, and in this case it's 0. So TradersWay is less problematic for us to trade not only the weekend gap but a number of other EAs, because the conflict between minimum stop levels and your actual stop levels and your trailing stops is reduced considerably if you have a 0 stop level. Now let's have a look at some other brokers. Okay, so here we have IG, and let's have a look at their stop level. So we go down to pound New Zealand, we right click, we click on specification, and here you can see that IG has a minimum, that's a minimum stop level of 35 pips. Now that's huge. It means that for the weekend gap, we cannot have a gap that is smaller than 35 plus the spread. And let's say the spread is 5 of 40. We can only start trading the weekend gap if that gap is bigger than 40, which doesn't really suit us very well. So obviously IG is not a suitable broker to trade the weekend gap on. Then we look at a company like Insta Forex, and we do the same thing. We go to pound New Zealand, we right click on specification, and we bring it in, and there the stop levels, in this case it's not points, it's actually pips, and the minimum stop level here is 12. So you can see 35 in one broker, 12 in another broker, 0 in another broker, and this is a critical area for manual traders and automated traders. It messes the stop placements and the following stops around quite a lot, and you will get a lot of error messages if you get this wrong. So the main solution is just to find a broker where the stop levels are 0. Now I have tested this on Pepperstone, for instance, and Pepperstone has a 0 minimum stop level. So there's a very reputable broker that has a 0 stop level. And there are others. We're using TradersWay for this weekend, but we might use Pepperstone for the next weekend and test it on that. But certainly there are brokers that are not suitable for the weekend gap trading, and maybe a whole lot of other EAs that we don't know of, where we'll only know when we get the error message, increase your initial stop or increase your trailing stop settings. So I hope you've learned something from this video. I hope I've made you aware of the importance of knowing your broker's stop settings. Brokers can set their MT4 platform up the way they want to. People don't realize that. They think there's a standard setting for MT4. The brokers can set it up any way they want to, and you need to be aware of the different settings that brokers apply. So from me, Alex Aplori, cheerio.